Hi there, my name is Toby, and on this video I want to take you through the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and I want to take you through with an alternative commentary, a different viewpoint on this, and it comes from the perspective of ether technology. So that's what I talk about on this channel. I talk about the body dynamics, Qigong, Taoist philosophy, and Tesla's science. These all go together. And these old buildings here were built with a knowledge of this ether, or a belief in this ether, and that's why they were so elaborate, so complex. The materials were important, the geometry was important, and the design was important. We just think now we sort of dismiss it as nothing. Well, they just like these fancy designs, but they weren't just fancy designs. They were very important technological designs. They had a purpose to them, and this is the Victorian Albert Museum here, and you can see already how complex and magnificent it is. It's got this sort of sandstone blocks at the base, and interestingly it goes underground as if it's been excavated, but the wall there also looks like it's made of the same stone, so whoever excavated it still knew how to build in the same way. So that's very interesting. And you've got this metal work onto stone, so those have got to be gas lights, but they might have also been free energy. These could have been electrostatic lights, and they connect to the electrostatics of the building, and the building was also built with this in mind. It was an electrostatic, they collected electrostatic energy from the atmosphere. This is why they had these tall spires, tall towers, and these domes at the top. But they also were collecting etheric energy, which is non-physical. This is a metaphysical energy. The life force is more mysterious. So we want to collect this life force together with this electromagnetism. And you can see the different types of brick. You've got the red brick and the sandstone, and this also creates layers. You see the red brick has got iron oxide in there, so that gives it a slight electrical quality, and the sandstone will have another and different effect. So you're creating a sort of battery with these layers of different types of rock, and granite is another one also. And there you can see a spire on the next door building, or the edge of this building rather, and you can see the domed archway here. Very elaborate, detailed work. And all this sandstone is really molded, it's not carved. This is actually geopolymer, so you've got ground up sandstone mixed with chemicals, and you can then create these different blocks. So that means whoever planned this or knew this building created all these blocks and put them together. So it's pieced together block by block, and that's why it can be so perfect. This is not hand carved, it's more like modeled and then molded, sculpted. And then cast, and you can see the massive doorways, very big doorways. It's hard to know whether this woodwork is still original, but nevertheless it's extremely complex, elaborate woodwork. And when you come into the building, you can see the floor. Everything is immaculate, perfect design, very detailed, very geometrical, and this geometry is important. It's going to have a particular mathematics to it, and you can see these three arches, a big one in the middle, two at the side, very common, and pillars everywhere, all these different pillars. And there's the entrance here. Again, very tall, big doorways, as if it was for bigger people, not just our size people. And I know people talk about that, and there's a lot of evidence for larger people being around. And if they were, it'd make a lot more sense how these things were built. They're very difficult to build, but a larger person could build this a bit easier. But look at the perfection of the domes. Look at the perfection of the domes. Quite incredible. And these here are natural marbles, so those have got to be lathed, turned pillars. So there's a lot of good technology there to create these perfect shapes out of natural rock. But a lot of this, like I said, is manufactured. So it's still a very high technology, a lost technology. We don't know how to make this stone here. And now I'm going to look at some artifacts inside. And this is my favourite, most mysterious one. How on earth did they make this? Now again, the details of who made it and whatnot is not so important. It's how did they make it? This apparently is rock crystal, quartz crystal. And they say it's hand carved. Well, you can't carve this by hand. How do you carve out the inside, and then how do you polish it? You've got to polish it perfectly. Polish the inside. How do you get in there and carve that out without cracking it? And it's also flawless. So that means this would have to be a lump of natural quartz that we just carved, and you'd have flaws in it, but there aren't any flaws. Now you can pause this if you want and read it, but they give you a very childish explanation, and they don't even call it quartz. They just call it hard stone rock crystal. But it means it's got to be quartz crystal. Now this could be blown. It could be blown, so you can do that, but it requires very high temperature. and it's very difficult to do. But if it was blown, it would turn into glass. And you see that handle looks like it's stuck on, again heated up and stuck on separately. But if this was blown, again, it should have little bubbles and it all looks flawless, and you still got to get that imprint on there, and that's not easy to do. And then you still got to be able to melt it and stick the handle on. How do you do that? So this is built very mysteriously. This looks like cast quartz crystal to me. So I know we can make artificial quartz now, but this is how the technology to make that is ridiculous. And if it's hand carved, there's got to be some way of, I don't know, softening the quartz, which we don't know about. Now this is wooden sculpture, and again, so we know how to carve wood. There's no doubt about how this was done. This has got to be carved by hand. But what interests me again is the perfection of it, the symmetry. What was important to these people was creating a form that had mathematics, it had symmetry, it had perfection, and it had a higher purpose to it. We've lost that now. Here's another Taoist master, because I talk about the Tao a lot. Here's a Taoist immortal sitting on a bull or a cow, and these guys had big heads. So again, we've got what do you call it, extraterrestrial connections possibly, but they just thought they were expanding the brain. And here's a Buddha. And again, there's a geometry to this. You see, sitting on a triangle, the shoulders have got to be a certain width, the hips have got to be a certain width, they balance everything. There's several things to a Buddha that they have to put in. In other words, the mathematics, the symmetry was important. And here's a samurai sword. Again, most incredible technology to be able to make this, or skill. And they can't make these anymore today. The skill is lost. Very, very difficult. So how did they have that ability? Whoever was around in the past were very, very masterful. It's a different type of people. And here you've got these marble sculptures, but I think a lot of these are actually cast. They're not carved, and it's hard to tell the difference. And if these were cast, it means again we've got a lost art of casting in marble. You take marble dust and mix it with chemicals and be able to cast it, and it turns into solid marble. But if that was cast, then you'd find little minute imperfections, like little bubbles at the edge. So that's what I'm looking for. We're close up, see if I can find any. And you're also looking for tool marks. If it was carved, you'd find areas of tool marks around. But this one again, it's hard to tell, but it looks pretty perfect, pretty perfect. I'll show a couple a bit later where you can see a bit of a difference. So anyway, either way, it's highly skillful or highly technological, and a technology that we don't have now, which we ought to have. Well, why have we lost this technology? It's building technology, it's craftsmanship, and again, they went out of their way to create ultra-realism, or some sort of perfected ultra-realism. So what they're doing is creating a perfect human body. They're trying to create perfection. That means they're using the mathematics of fire, the golden ratio. Everything in nature uses this mathematics. And they're trying to create an image of a perfect human, and doing something powerful. There's some symbolism to this, so that when we look at it, and that looks like it could be little imperfections. So this might be cast. These are like little bubbles in there. So this whole thing would be cast, which makes it in a way much easier to make. We're not now puzzling how did all these minute details happen. But to cast it again is incredibly difficult. You've got to sculpt it in clay and then create the mold for it and then cast it in this marble dust. Highly difficult technology. So whatever was done here was quite incredible, and we need to look at this with an open mind. But to me, the most important thing is this represents a people that were concerned with ether, and there's me with something that looked a bit like me. Now these buildings are interesting. They're tunnels underneath. So this is a tunnel entrance, and they connect to other museums around. And I suspect, and people have investigated this, there are different tunnels, many, many more tunnels that we don't know, don't see, and they go many levels down. So if we built these buildings, we built it very low down, or we built it on top of other things, and we built all this tunnel network underneath at the same time. And again, this looks like old world stuff. These tiles are very perfect, these shapes, this geometry, very perfect. So there's a lot of tunnels, and that makes it very mysterious. And now coming outside in the back courtyard, you can see some of the other old world buildings around, some old pillars, and again you see the red brick sandstone. Now that triangle is important. That looks like a 137 triangle. That looks like a golden ratio triangle. So literally there is the golden ratio. And now we're looking at some of the artifacts inside, and these are some huge things from around the world. But these are not original, these are cast. And this is interesting. This is Rosslyn Chapel, the famous chapel in Edinburgh, all about the Da Vinci Code movies, I think it was. But look at this cast, how elaborate the interior of this chapel, this sort of mini cathedral was. You've got all these little protrusions sticking out. And this is again is electrostatic. The higher the surface area, the more electrostatics it has. So when you have all these little nodules, these little projections, this is increasing the surface area. It's helping to build up the electrostatics inside the building. And of course, extremely ornate design. It's very organic, but it's also mathematical. And you've got this coiling helix, double helix of the DNA, or the serpent rising up. There's a lot of depth to this, and then in the middle there you've got a direct downward projection, like sort of an egg shape. Again, this will be the golden ratio. So all this geometry is important, and the measurements need to be taken, the alignment needs to be examined, because it will be aligned with magnetic north. It will go again deep down underground, there'll be catacombs underneath, perhaps water running underneath. All this stuff is high technology. It's just mysterious to us, because it's made out of stone. But again, I suspect that was all geopolymer. Very elaborate castings. And here's another interesting thing, an eagle. You see these eagles everywhere representing particular empires, but I think it goes back further. The eagle, of course, is shamanic, representing something else. So there is also metaphysical symbology in here. They're historical, but also metaphysical, and this is a Celtic cross. Now this is highly abstract metaphysics as well. The cross is important. Then you've got these circles. These could be planets, these could be atomic structure, these could be all sorts of things, what this represents. Again, we're assuming primitive knowledge. If we let go of this is not primitive knowledge. It's a different knowledge, but it's a more holistic knowledge. Now this is interesting. This is a carving in marble, and you can see a sort of etchings on one, and one is smooth. This one I think is a smooth one. So again, that made me wonder, now is this one cast because it's smooth all over, and the other one you can see it's carved out, so that you've got hand tool mark. Oh, there you can go. You can see on that one more carving marks. So that looks like a carving. It's been chiseled out. So it's very interesting just to examine how these things were made. And again, you've got real historical figures and you've got these names, but you could argue that names and dates have been added afterwards. So there's some controversy as to when these buildings were actually made, because a lot of them have a sign on it saying founded 1888 or something. But founded just means found. It does not mean constructed. It does not mean erected. It does not mean built. So in other words, there could have been this mud flood and they were found and excavated, and then a date put on there. So again, if you look at the erosion on some of these buildings, they look a lot older than they should be. And there again you can see probably the 137 golden ratio arch, and there we got our modern flags at the top. So on top of all that, we put our stamp on it. These become ours, but these were really powerhouses for all of us. And there again you can see interesting window going down below ground. That implies it was excavated. Again, we're not sure, but it makes sense. And this again, different type of stone. You can see the sort of terracotta stone. And here's the top again of the Victorian Albert. Look at these very interesting structures at the top, domes. They seem to hold no purpose. They're just open air things, but they look very technological. There's numbers of pillars, and the number of pillars will be important, the numerology, but of course these are also electrical. They help to bring the electrostatics up and down. And they also have this little flowery thing at the top, which is like the magnetic field bubbling over the top. So they've got this idea of electromagnetism in there somehow, and they've got a figure at the top, you saw. Now this is interesting. This is bullet holes from the war, so they shot bullets at these buildings. And I'm looking closely at it to try and see evidence if this is geopolymer or natural carved stone. And it all looks quite uniform. There are bits in there, so you can add bits of seashell and whatnot, but it all looks very uniform. So I suspect these buildings are built with this geopolymer substance, these created sandstone bricks. So you've got created red bricks and created sandstone bricks and different types of bricks, and they will be done for different purposes. In other words, the electrostatics were included, and you can see the stripes. The stripes are like layers in a battery. they have a different effect. And again, another building here, massive archway, incredible structures, and then you can see the words put on top, but these words could have been added later. It's hard to tell if that was the case or not. And again, incredible sculptures all added to the side together with it. So the sculptures, these images were important, and again, possibly more free energy electrostatic lights. And this is the Imperial College in London, where I studied physics. And there you can see the metal at the top for electrostatic, collecting the atmospheric energy. But yes, I did a degree in physics here, and I nearly did a PhD in theoretical physics. And here you can see the front of the building, and you've got yellow bricks, red and yellow bricks in stripes. So again, this has got a design, but it's also got a sort of battery effect. There may be another purpose to these stripes, these different layers, because you'll have granite also towards the bottom, and granite will have another effect, a piezoelectric effect. And these effects, of course, are very slight, tiny, tiny effects, but the building is massive. And at the time when these buildings were around, we didn't have all these other wires, other electric currents going on, so they would have had more of an effect on us, because these would have been the only electrics around. Right now we've got electric wires, power lines running everywhere, so we're surrounded by electric fields and radio waves, microwaves. So the electrostatics of these buildings is a bit wiped out. We don't notice it so much now. And this is the Royal Albert Hall, concert hall. And again, this is phenomenal geometry and building skills. And again, someone needs to do a bit more research in the alignment, the size of this, the proportionality of this. And there again, you can see the triangle in front, the golden ratio triangle. Once more back to Imperial College, you can see the top window there. And again, all these windows would be cast. These aren't carved. They'd be cast and put into place. There's a different type of triangle there. And now we come down to some old lights. You can see the old light there, but that goes to the ground. And once more, it looks like it's underground. So could this have been excavated? And could that front door have been, just built to? Maybe the front door was a bit lower, or something a bit lower down. It was a bigger entrance. So there's a lot of mysteries about these old buildings that still need to be answered, and it's worth looking into. But I think the most important thing is these were built with the concept of ether, and that meant they were good for us. They had some healing benefits to us, and we need to go there and have a look at them and study them and try and feel the energy inside them, make the most of them. So thank you so much for watching, and check out the previous video on the Natural History Museum, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these videos here.